if you weren't here during the first session, I talked about the fact that every church, regardless of size, is significant. Every church is important. Every church is valuable. Regardless of whether you're a church of 50 people or 5,000 people, every church has its place. Churches are like T-shirts. We need all sizes. And to reach our communities in Australia, we need to plant more churches. We need to grow more churches. We need to have more churches going out. There was a young guy, Daniel, here in the first session, planted out about 12 months, 2 years ago. He's already got $2 million in the bank, he told us. Where are you, Daniel? Have you run home, or are you still here, or he's taken off to spend some of that money, maybe? I'm not sure if the 2 mil was a correct assessment of his total bank balance, but anyway, congratulations to the 7 folks who have been ordained as well today. What an awesome thing to be in a conference and movement where people are going, yeah, I'll be a pastor, I'll be a minister, I'll be a leader, I'll put my hand up. Well done, congratulations, and maybe there'll be more rising. My wife and I, Diane and I, have been married for 41 years, celebrated 41 years of marriage this year. We've got 2 beautiful children, 4 magnificent, glorious grandsons. One of my wife's loves in life is jigsaws, and we have a lovely dining room table that we'll have family meals around, but one of the main reasons we have a dining room table is for Diane's jigsaws, and she has a special jigsaw board. If you're into jigsaws, you know what I'm talking about. It's a special board that folds up and everything, and my wife is a particularly pedantic, melancholic, loves detail. She's introverted. She loves kind of being alone and spending hours with a jigsaw. I like helping with the jigsaw edges. Anyone with me? Everything else is like overwhelming, too much, and Diane organizes the piles of colors and gets them all sorted, and when I'm feeling slightly naughty, I'll come and mess her piles up, which does her head in. She doesn't like that. It doesn't help our marriage, but it's a bit of fun. You've got to have a bit of fun, folks, when you're married 41 years. When our first grandson, Jack, was born, when he was about 2 or 3, Diane went out and, of course, bought him a jigsaw. And it's one of those kids' jigsaws where the pieces are this big. It's my sort of jigsaw. You can put together in 2 seconds flat if I'm just working on it. And I remember Jack, when we got this jigsaw, he pulled out the box, he poured all the pieces on the lounge floor and made me sit down with him. And he kind of helped him sort the pieces out and everything. Then he did something remarkable. He picked up the lid, the box lid of the jigsaw, and stood it up on the lounge room floor. I thought, he's seen his grandmother. Put the box lid up, and he began to put the pieces together, and he'd look at the box lid and put the pieces together and check the... I thought he's watched his grandmother put a jigsaw together by having a box lid, having a model, having a template, having the picture of what it will look like when you've got it all together. This morning, I want to take you in a real different session to the previous one, into the scriptures, and I want to put some box lid leaders up in front of you, some box lid ministers, some box lid believers. I want to take you into a passage written by a veteran church planter. This guy whose passage we're going to go into is the great apostle Paul. When he wrote the passage that I'm going to take you into, he was about 50 years of age, which was extremely old in the first century. The life expectancy in the first century Roman Empire for a man was around 36 or 37. So if you got to 40, you were old. If you got to 50, you were like ancient. Paul actually made it into his 60s. But when he's writing this passage that I'm going to read for you and with you in a moment and show you some box lids that we can emulate, and those 7 folks who have been ordained today, I want to hold these box lids up to you, to every pastor, to every leader, to every member of the church here, to both encourage you, to inspire you, to motivate you that what you've heard this week at conference, or even if this is your very first session at conference, that you'll head out that door knowing that others have gone before you, that you can follow their example, you can follow their model. So we're going to jump into Romans chapter 16. Paul, when he writes this, is sitting in the city of Corinth, a city of about 90,000 people, a third of whom are slaves. 30,000 out of a 90,000 Corinth were slaves. Roman Empire was built to a great degree on the work and the labor and the sweat and blood and tears of slaves. And Paul is sitting in Corinth writing to the Roman church. He writes in Romans that all his work in that region of the world, what we know today as Slovenia, Slovakia, Macedonia, Greece, into Turkey, he says the gospel has been preached in all these regions. I've got nothing left to do. And I'm on my way to Spain, he writes in Romans 15. And I'm going to come to you, the Roman church, and I'm going to visit you, and you will help me on my way to Spain. I don't think he leaves them an option. Paul was a fairly obstinate, direct, candid sort of leader. He said, I'm going to come to you, and you will help me take the gospel into Spain. And as he sits there and writes, he's had the last 10 years of his life planting churches. He's just finished his 3-year sojourn in Ephesus, probably planted in 3 years 10 churches around the province of Asia. Most of them are mentioned in the book of Revelation: Philadelphia, Smyrna, Laodicea, planted out of Paul's endeavors. He's a veteran, hardened, if you like, battle-hardened church planting leader. And I love to dive into this passage because this passage is written out of the heart of an apostle who loves the church, who loves church leaders. I want to take you into this passage and plant you, if you like, in the city of Corinth and watch you explore with me Paul's heart and passion, and hold a few box lids up in front of you. So if you've got a Bible, come with me to Romans chapter 16. Just for the young people in the crowd, this is called a book. It's a great app. It's very easy to open. You just have to do that. And to close the app, you just do that. I love using retro Bibles. They're probably cool again by now. This Bible's about 12, 13 years old. I try and wear Bibles out. This one's got a bundle of sticky tape in it to hold it together because I want my great-grandchildren to read my Bible. I say, great-granddad must have really smashed this thing up because there's writing all over, there's sticky tape in it, there's coffee spills. Ruin your Bible, folks. Okay, maybe don't. I can tell there's a huge amount of excitement about the idea of ruining your Bible. I'm into it. Romans chapter 16, verse 1. You can follow with me or just listen. I commend you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church in Centuria. I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of his people, and to give her any help she may need from you. For she's been the benefactor of many people, including me. I do want you to notice as I read how many times Paul does mention Jesus in this passage. Verse 3. Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus. They risked their lives for me. Not only I, but all the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. Greet also the church that meets at their house. Greet my dear friend Epanetus, who was the first convert to Christ in the province of Asia. Greet Mary, who worked very hard for you. Greet Andronicus and Junia, my fellow Jews who have been in prison with me. They are outstanding among the apostles, and they were in Christ before I was. Greet Ampliatus, my dear friend in the Lord. Greet Urbanus, my co-worker in Christ, and my dear friend Stachys. Greet Apelles, whose fidelity to Christ has stood the test. Greet those who belong to the household of Aristobulus. I actually love that name, Aristobulus. Be a good name for a grandchild, but my children don't agree. Greet Herodian, my fellow Jew. Greet those in the household of Narcissus who are in the Lord. Greet Tryphenia and Tryphosia, those women who worked hard in the Lord. Greet my dear friend Persis, another woman who has worked very hard in the Lord. Paul mentions 4 women in this passage who worked hard in the Lord. He does not mention any men who worked hard in the Lord. Read into that whatever you please. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me too. Greet Asyncritus, Philologus, Hermes, Petrobus, Hermas, and the other brothers and sisters with them. Greet Philologus, Julia, Nereus and his sister, and Olympus, and all the Lord's people who are with them. Greet one another with a holy kiss. All the churches of Christ send greetings. In 16 verses, Paul will mention around about 25, 26 co-workers, just about all of them whom, bar one, he has sent already ahead to Rome to prepare the ground there for him for his launch pad into Spain. But what's remarkable about this passage, and the first box lid leader I want to put in front of you today is Paul, is that he mentions Jesus a dozen times in 16 verses. It's the end of his longest letter. It's the first letter in the New Testament order of Paul's letters, primarily because they're ordered in sense of size and style of size, and his longest letter that has magnificent theology in it that's been forged through 20 years of walking with Jesus, 10 years of planning churches, and magnificent instructions on how to live the Christian life. But I love it when this veteran 50-year-old, really old in first century terms, pastor says at the end of the letter, he's mentioning all of his co-workers, but during laying out all his greetings to these workers, he cannot help himself, but he's got to mention Jesus again and again and again and again. I wonder if I wrote down 16 verses with people I've worked and served with the gospel, I wonder whether I would mention Jesus that much. I love it that as an older believer, a veteran believer who has suffered unbelievable things to plant churches, to take the gospel where it's not been done before, to not build on another man's foundation, but to be a pioneer, to apostolically pioneer churches where he has suffered rejection, he's suffered being stoned, he's suffered all sorts of abuse, he's suffered betrayal. In fact, even the very church that he sits in, the Corinthian church, he's had to visit multiple times, wrote altogether 4 or 5 letters to them. We've lost 2 or 3 of them, which is heartbreaking to me. I would love to read the other letters that Paul wrote to the Corinthian church, and they rejected his apostleship, but now they're reconciled, and he sits in the city of Corinth, and he writes about Jesus. I want to hold Paul up to you, that whatever we do in church life, whatever we do in church leadership, we cannot leave the place of a fresh connection, a vibrant, relevant connection with Jesus Christ. One of the things, I've been a pastor for nearly 38 years now. One of the things that has enabled me to get through 38 years, and I tell you, I could make your hair fall out, let alone stand on end, with some of the stories that I've suffered as a pastor. I could make you stand and cheer with some of the joys I've experienced as a pastor. But one of the things that's kept me for 38 years is not me. One of the things that's kept me is that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, I have decided that I will not abandon the place of connection personally and privately with Jesus Christ. I've had a habit over the years of what I call a time and a place. I'm a morning guy. I like getting up in the morning, and when I first kind of wake up, it's a bit, but after 5 or 10 minutes, I'm awake. I'm going out into my kitchen in the morning, and I have a coffee machine, and I get that coffee machine fired right up. I find my day starts better with caffeine. Well, I can feel the affirmation on that principle. I get my little bit of caffeine, I get some water, and I head upstairs, and I sit, and I used to sit on the floor. When I was a young guy, I used to have a couple of cushions, and I'd sit on the floor, and that was my place. I found as I've gotten older, it's harder to get up off the floor. It's true. So I got a nice little chair there, and I got a little prayer chair, and I sit down in my chair, and I get my retro Bible out. I love getting my Bible out, and I'll get a pen, and I don't care what color it is. I'm not too fussed on whether it's red, blue, green, purple, or black, or whatever. I want to write different things. I hang out with the Bible, and then I sit there with Jesus. And sometimes it's 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 40 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour. Some days it's 3 minutes. Some days it's 37 and a half minutes. I don't know what it is some days. I just sit there with the Lord, and month in, month out, year in, year out, I have found my time and my place. I remember 22 years ago, I went through 15 months of clinical depression. We were pastoring our church. We were leading our church into a building program, buying 5 acres of land and doing a big building property and selling our current building. And I hit the wall in a key mentoring relationship in my life and plunged me into despair of depression. At times during that 15 months, I got suicidal. I thought it'd be easy to check out of this life, just get out. I knew I was in a bad place. My wife knew I was in a bad place. But you know what I refused to do through that time? I refused to give up my time and place with Jesus. And I'd go and get on my study floor with my couple of cushions. I was younger. And I'd sit there, and some mornings I'd sit there for 40 minutes and say nothing. At the end of it, I'd just say, Jesus, you got to help me, because I do not know how I'm going to get through. And I'd say the next day, Lord, this prayer life is pathetic. This is useless, hopeless, but I don't know what else to do. And I got dragged through that season by my wife, my dearest friends, but I got dragged through that season because Jesus turned up one morning. I'm sitting on my cushions. I'm sitting there with the Lord. And if you've ever had clinical depression, you know what it's like. It's a black tunnel that you can't see the reason to live tomorrow. It can get that dark. And I'm sitting there, and in my mind's eye, just out of nowhere, I get a vision just across my mind. There's a hand coming down out of heaven. I can just see from about there down there. And this hand is hanging on to my collar. And I'm dangling like a rag doll. And the Holy Spirit just into my heart spoke, you can let go, but I never will. You can let go, but I never will. And I always wonder, what if I'd given up my time and my place? Can I ask you today, renew your time and your place. Maybe you're a night owl. You like praying at 11 o'clock. If I pray at 11 o'clock, it's hopeless, gone, history. Mornings for me, that's my time. My wife loves to walk and pray. She'll go down for walks, just down by the beach. She'll walk along and pray. If I go for a prayer walk, I get way too distracted by everything going on. Oh, look, a seagull. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Lord. Oh, look at that. Oh, coffee, cafe. Oh, hopeless, useless. But you get me in my time and my place. What's your time? Where's your place? Can you take me there? Can you tell someone, this is my time, this is my place? And it's not like I have to be there every day. I'm not a legalist, ritual, you have to do this, and it has to be a certain length of time. You got to tick all these boxes. Gave up that years ago. That doesn't work for me. But I know if I go without that time and place, something in here starts to dry up. And you end up doing ministry and leadership out of memory rather than out of relationship. And you 7 folks who just got ordained, you're going to have a wild journey over the rest of your leadership pastoring life. I'm kind of envious. I'd like to go back and start again, but then I go, oh, no. I think I'll just keep motoring on from where I am. Well, what a joyful launch into your ministry. Do not. I want to be like Paul, that when I'm really old, I'm not that old yet. When I'm really old, this is not gray, this is platinum. It's platinum class. Don't tell me I'm getting gray. I'm platinum class, baby. When I get really old like Paul, I want Jesus still to be on these lips. I want Jesus to be in my heart. I want Jesus to be talking about Jesus when you're really old and you've had some battle scars. You're not talking about the battles and the wounds and the scars. You're talking about Jesus. Oh, my Lord. What's your time? What's your place? You're going to do lots of things out of this conference. Can I ask you to do this thing? Renew that time. Renew that place. My goodness, is that the time? Another box lid person. I love this one, verse 1. I commend to you our sister Phoebe. Now, Paul, you'll notice, greets everybody else. Hi, greet, g'day, how you going? He doesn't do that with Phoebe. She's the one standout in this verse, in this chapter, that he doesn't say hi. Everyone else is in Rome. Phoebe, most scholars believe that when Paul writes, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, he doesn't greet her, that Phoebe was the leader who was given the letter to the Romans and asked by Paul to carry that letter to the church in Rome. We know a little bit about Phoebe because of what Paul says about her. She's the leader of the church in Centuria, which is the port of Corinth, about 8 kilometers down the road, so probably a plant out of the church in Corinth. She's a leader there. And Paul says, I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of his people, to give her any help. That's a pretty commendation from an apostle. Give her any help. There's no limits, no boundaries on this Roman church. Give her anything she wants. For she has been the benefactor of many people, including me. This word benefactor was a huge part of Corinthian society. As I said, a third of Corinth were slaves. If we were in the Corinthian church this morning, there's about a third. You guys are the slaves. Say hello to your owners over here. Owners would bring their slaves to church. A third of the city was slaves, probably a third, maybe even more than a third of the church were slaves. But it wasn't so much some of the slavery we understand and know. People like Phoebe would be benefactors, or another word used in Corinthian society was to be a patron. And someone like Phoebe would go down to the slave market. Where's Dave, our keyboard guy? Right, Dave. You know, if I went down, Phoebe went down to the slave market, she'd see Dave and say, you look pretty good, you look pretty healthy, you're young, you've got some good teeth there. We'll kind of, I'm going to buy you, Dave. Dave, are you married? Oh, great. Do you have children? Yeah, bring them all. How many children do you have? I'm buying the lot. This is what happened in Corinthian society. You can read this. And they would buy someone like Dave and say, Dave, I'm going to send you to the conservatorium of music we have here in Corinth. I'm going to pay all your fees. You will never have to work another day in your life in anything but music and singing. I'm buying you. I'm going to send you for your study. And whenever I have a party in my area of the city, in my area of Centuria, I don't have an iPod because it's the first century. You're going to be it, man. You're going to come out and do the music thing. You're going to do creative expressions and everything. Your family will live on my property. I will be your patron of the arts. Are you interested? Too bad, doesn't matter. You're a slave. I buy you. You just do what you're told. You would go down to the slave market, and Milton, I'm buying you today. Is this your wife next to you? Shouldn't make assumptions about that. You have children? Oh, awesome. Okay, you're coming too. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a physician. I'm sending you to medical school. You're going to be the family doctor for me and for my village. Some scholars think that Luke was a slave. His owner was Theophilus. And patrons and benefactors would do this. They wouldn't just get menial labor. They'd have a finance person they'd board. They'd send them to accounting school. They'd have medical people. They'd have musicians. They'd have chefs, because they were basically seen as people who were a patron of the society, and they would provide physicians, musicians, chefs, not just for their family, but for their estate and their village. In other words, Corinthian society ran on patronage that was run especially like Phoebe, who had a bigness of heart to think beyond herself. So when Paul said, Phoebe, I got the longest letter I've ever written. It's full of theology. I think it might help the church over the next few thousand years. Don't know if he thought that, but I got this huge letter. I need someone who will give up what they're currently doing and take the risky, long, arduous journey to Rome and hand the letter over there, read it, and impel it into their hearts from my heart. Would you do this for me? And Phoebe, God bless her, said, I'm the benefactor of many. I'm not a tight-fisted, stingy little small-minded believer sitting here in the small town of Centuria. I got a big heart. Paul, my heart is wide and open to serve. Give me that letter. I'll leave the business behind. Most people think she was a businesswoman. I'll leave all that behind. I'll leave the estate. I'll take the arduous journey because this is a vital thing. How many of you ever been to Perth? Who's been up to Kings Park in Perth? I love Kings Park. 500 hectares of mainly native virgin bushland, bigger than Hyde Park in London. It's bigger than Central Park in New York. It is one of the biggest parks in a central city of any city in the world. In the 19th century, John Septimus Roe, the Surveyor General of the colony of Perth, and Lord John Forrest, our first Premier, sat down and said, we are going to put aside for the generations yet to come a whole region of native bushland. If you haven't been to Perth, you must come. And you must stand on Kings Park. And the view of the city, isn't it fantastic? You've been up there? It's amazing. You stand there and go, wow. I stand up and think, man, if I was Lord John Forrest, I would have built my mansion right on the best spot where the war memorial is. And John said to him, right, you beauty, I'm building right next door to you, buddy, because that land is now worth multiple hundreds of millions of dollars if you could put it on the market, and you can't. Here were two men back in the 19th century who had what I call the heart of Phoebe, who said, you know what? Cities don't get blessed by small-minded, stingy, let it be for me people. Cities get blessed and built by big-hearted benefactors who think of the many, not just themselves. If you've been to Perth, have you seen the bell tower? I apologize for the bell tower. The bell tower is a puny, little, horrible thing. Yes, you're right, absolutely, amen. It's a horrible little thing that was meant to be like an Eiffel Tower, magnificent model of modern Perth. And so many people criticized it and went on and on and on about it. They kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And in our city, I'll take people up to Kings Park and they'll see the bell tower and they'll say, what's that? And I'll say, don't bother. No, what is it? That's a sign of small-mindedness. Kings Park, that's our big heart, man. Bigness, generosity, small-minded will not get the things done that you want done in your church. All of us think too small. All of us. I think way too small. Way too small-minded in my thinking. Way too narrow in my thinking. And every now and again, this is what's great about conferences. You go to a conference and Rob gets up here and does his leadership thing and boom, boom, drops the odd grenade in occasionally. Things go, whoa, whoa, what's that? Wow, You know what the Lord's trying to do? The Lord says, my thoughts are bigger than your thoughts. My ways are way bigger than your ways. And God's trying to get a hold of my little small thinking and go, John, just do a little operation on your brain here because you're too small. Let me take it out. Let me help you think bigger. Here's the Finkelde proverb. If you want to think bigger, start thinking big. If you want to think bigger, start thinking big. Sounds weird, but think on it. Start to have bigger thoughts, bigger dreams, things that scare you. Di and I handed our church over, like Rob said, 7 years ago. A church is a great church, still a great church, doing wonderful things. And Di and I said at that stage of our lives, look, we could just cruise on here for another decade, but we just have something in us that we want to do. And I said to Di, we'll give it a go for 2 years. If it doesn't work, we'll just go find something else to do. I do not want to, at my age, model conservative, safety, risk-free living. Platinum class doesn't live risk-free. Grey might, but platinum class doesn't, folks. People of faith are not designed to have everything locked down, secure, and all set. People of faith need to, about every 3 or 4 years, you need to have the 4 a.m. hot sweats. You know what the 4 a.m. hot sweats is? You wake up 4 a.m. going, oh God, what have I done? You and I need that not every night for every year, but about every 3 or 4 years, you need to be waking up 4 a.m. going, God, help. If you haven't had that for a few years, do a Phoebe. Get bigger. Take a risk. Take a jump out. Let me finish. One more thought. One more box. I've kind of already started talking about it. Verse 3. Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus, they risked their lives for me. Don't you hate the Bible when it doesn't give any detail? How did they do that, Paul? Maybe it was in Ephesus where Paul just escaped from. They risked their life for me. I don't believe that in Christian leadership we should live in a risk-free zone. Take my hat off to Rick and Leonie. I just love what you're doing here with your 103 campuses. Just kidding, man. I love what you're doing, building buildings, childcare centers with 5,000 children next door. I have trouble with some numbers. I'm not good with all numbers, but always like to go on the upside. But you guys model risk. It's the four-letter word for faith. 7 folks that got up here this morning. You know what they're modeling? Risk. I'm going to be a leader, a pastor, a minister. Oh my goodness. Rob Nyes, pastor in a great church in Melbourne, says, I think I'll come and have a crack at being the executive officer of a movement I've never been in. Yeah, that's safe living. Wow, that's really got everything nailed down. That's so secure. What an awesome career move. You know what this is modeling to each of us? Don't get your faith life so insured that it's all settled. That's not a faith life. I started out in ministry as a youth pastor 37 years ago in our church. Our founding pastor came to me and said, John, the youth is booming, growing. I want you to come on the staff as a pastor, as a youth pastor. I said, Pastor Frank, I'm keen for that. I want to do that. He said, we haven't got any money at the moment, so just can't do it at the moment. We'll just have to see what God does. Came back to me 6 months ago, 6 months later, said, John, we've had a miracle. Someone has given your year's salary to bring you on staff. I thought, wow, that's generosity plus. I said, Pastor Frank, who is it? He said, they've given it on the basis that they remain anonymous. I said, well, how can I thank them? He said, no, they don't want you to know. And so I ended up going on staff as a youth pastor. My first year's salary was paid for completely by one person. So I wasn't happy that I wasn't able to thank them. So for about 10 years, I just did the drip treatment to Pastor Frank. And I'd say to him, I'd try and catch him off guard. Who is that person who gave that money? He said, naughty boy. He eventually told me. He gave in. He said, well, look, you might as well know now, it's years. He says, Wes and Sue Prosser. I said, get out. Wes at that time was the business manager of our church. Had 4 little children. 4 little kids. He had some inheritance coming from farm money, and he went to Pastor Frank and said, Pastor, don't pay me for 1 year. Use my salary to pay John, and we'll believe God in 12 months. You can put me back on salary. What a risk. 4 little kids. It's the biggest sacrifice I have seen anyone make in my ministry years. Because when I found out, I just, every time I see Wes, I can't thank him enough. And I cannot live a risk-free life to honor that. Are there any Wes and Sue Prossers here today? Are there people who are saying to Jesus, I'm not going to insure my faith life. I'm going to keep doing what Rob's doing, Rick and Leonie are doing, others here in the room, the 7 people ordained. I'm going to keep doing what Priscilla and Aquila. I'm going to risk my life for the sake of the gospel. Would you stand with me this morning?